Good morning. What's shaking, everyone? I'm gonna pull this up here so I can see any comments in chat. Oop, I don't want to hear myself though. Alright, we're live. Gosh, now that I'm thinking about it, this is so grainy. Good morning, Brandon. I've been informed that my phone is super grainy and fuzzy, and I looked at it and there's so much pocket lint and dust under the screen in my phone, so if this looks really crappy quality from like the 90s, that's why. What up? Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning, Ryan. Morning, Richard. Morning, Adam. Good morning, Terry. Holy cow. This is a first. What's up? Firing on all cylinders. Good morning. Coffee. Good morning, Jeff. How's everyone's morning going? I'm liking this 8:30 time slot. So far, I think this is the front runner. I'm doing good. Doing good. I've got 4 days off from work, which is nice. I get to spend 4 days doing my thing. Skiing? Nice. Get that kid in the snow soon, man. That's awesome. I'm jealous. I need to get up there. Good morning, Carly. Yeah. No, I hear you. Gotta keep everyone happy. Good morning, Ed. Yeah. Somebody a few days ago, probably earlier this week, actually messaged me and was asking if I could talk a bit about digestion on here, and I thought that was a great idea. I like food, snakes like food, and we're always hearing different methods of how people approach feeding schedules or lack thereof, or their thought process behind it. Good morning, Kenny. And so I did some digging and asking around, and there's a few articles that have been floating around over the last few years that are like the ones that get circulated the most. And there's one that's been floating around that people have seen a lot of, where they studied sort of the digestive rate in burms to like see what was going on, and they found all the metabolic rate increases and all this metabolic change that happens for a little while. And then I was like, well, that's that's pretty logical. That makes sense. Their organs have to work a little bit harder to digest that food, and so there's an increase in size of some of the organs and the output. So then afterwards they need that rest time, and we understand that. But then I was digging around and I found a couple new articles. So I have my laptop behind the camera here, and I've got these articles pulled up. So if I don't respond to something you guys say in the chat or something like that, it could be because I've missed it and I've just been checking this out in the back here. But there were a couple things that I thought were really interesting, and I haven't seen the guys from the Herpetoculture podcast on here just yet this morning. They'll probably pop in, but they they found a cool article. Justin Smith sent me one where he found somebody had done research using corn snakes, and they started with, I think it was 32 individual baby corn snakes, all various like litter clutches, and all around the same size, and then they grouped them all into 4 like groups, just like kind of small subsects within them as far as length and weight. And they performed an experiment where they took the same size food at the same interval for each animal, and they altered the rodent they offered. So in one, they had the control where they didn't do anything. Another one, they put a couple perforations through the skin. Another one, they did perforation through the skin into the thoracic cavity of the rodent. And then the other one, they did, I think, a different style of punctures through the skin. The whole thought process was, when a snake is digesting a rodent, the skin and hair stuff they can't really digest. So what's happening as they're eating it is their mucus and the digestive enzymes are entering the body and getting the nutrients through the mouth and the anus of the rodent. Kind of gross to say, but that's the truth. And so when you have animals that occasionally like poop out what looks like still partially undigested rodent, it's because they've essentially digested it from the inside out, and what's left is stuff they didn't waste their time digesting. In periods of high temperatures, their bodies are working a lot more. So when food is abundant and it's warm, they have no problem expending the energy, passing it out quickly because they know more food is coming. So that will happen. But also what they were finding was the babies that were eating the rodents perforated into the thoracic cavity were growing significantly larger and longer at a basically they had about 3 times the growth rate of just a normal non-altered food, I think it was, and then some of the others was a little bit less. But basically what they found is by puncturing through the rodent's skin, it allowed those digestive enzymes to enter that rodent food item much more freely and allowed the animal to pull out the nutrients more efficiently and grow a little bit more as a result of it. So that's really interesting. We always hear about people clipping the beaks and the legs off of bird prey because they can't digest it. I'm sure that's along the same lines. So that's something to think about. Morning, John. So yeah, go stab your rodents. It's probably pretty gross though, because you can't do it while they're frozen. You got to do it while they're thawed. We're all gonna learn from this one and probably decide whether or not we have the stomach for that pretty quickly. So that was really interesting. That was a cool find. So if you guys have any animals that are like you're trying to get growing up, or females you're trying to like get weight back on, that don't do it live prey. Yes, I do not endorse that. Good call, Ryan. If you're trying to get an animal like this little girl to grow a bit, I would probably consider making her a target of that feeding method where I punctured the rodents to try and get her a little more uptake. So that was interesting. I thought that was really cool. And then I started looking around some more, and I'm pretty sure yeah, everybody go stab your rodents this week, and we'll revisit this next week, and we'll see who was grossed out the most. But I think they did this study over the course of maybe like only like a couple months, like 2-3 months. So they were able to see results like in a short time frame. So that was really neat. And then I found this other article. It's actually a published master's thesis from Gavin Bedford, and I believe he was on NPR not too long ago. And his here, I'm gonna read it a little bit. I'm gonna probably pull from the abstract, so if I'm missing your comments and stuff, it's because I'm not looking, and I apologize. His thesis is called Metabolic Physiology, Digestive Efficiency, and Energetics of Some Australian Pythons. So instantly I saw that little title and I was like, well, that's interesting, because that's kind of a little more tailored to what I was looking for. The other stuff that's about berms and whatnot is definitely relevant. But let's see. So they were doing feeding experiments to determine the extent of specific dynamic action at 4 temperatures. The digestive efficiency and energy budgets were also determined for the pythons at each temperature. Python metabolic rate follows the general. Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff in here that, like, even in just the abstract, you probably have to read, and me reading it out to you guys is just going to go. But basically, it looks like they were testing feeding these different snakes at 4 different temperatures to see like if at a certain temperature their standard metabolic rate went through the roof, or the standard dynamic action went up, how many times from the SMR. And they wanted to see if it varied at different temperatures, and if one was more efficient for the animals. And this one bit down here kind of really clarified a lot of it for me. So I will read this. Basically said The results suggest that digestion at lower temperatures may be advantageous if food is scarce, so i.e. probably in the winter time. However, at high temperatures, digestion time is reduced, which might be why we see partially undigested rodents. Allowing more food to be ingested within a given time, so summer when there's a lot of abundant food, compared to digestion at low temperatures. Although at high temperatures the metabolic cost of SDA is high, it is possible for pythons to assimilate more energy compared to digestion at lower temperatures by consuming more food per unit of time. This suggests that digestion at higher temperatures may be advantageous if food is abundant. So, what that tells me is we see an adaptation for these snakes to survive in different seasons when food is at varying levels of abundancy and still be able to digest and grow. So, for example, this girl, I gave her a rat pup or something, or a weaned rat, and she spent about a whole week before I saw any waste from that rodent, and it was only urates. No feces so far, no partially digested rodents, and she's been experiencing a night drop. So essentially what she's going through is a scarce food, lower temperature time. But she's been putting on weight and growing with me pretty considerably. And this time of year, I'm still offering her food, but I'm offering it considerably less. And she's still growing and she's putting on weight. So, that could be what's going on, is that during this time of year, she has this adaptation, like most snakes do, to efficiently take more food during these cooler times because the standard dynamic action that is required is low, but it's still effective. So I don't know all these terms, and I'm not like super familiar with the science. I'm only just sort of like getting my head around it, and it's really interesting to think about. But basically, what I'm taking away from it is there are tricks we can do to allow our animals to still grow at different times of the year. If you are like me and you like to cycle feed, where you pretty much don't offer food in the winter, or just very small food items less frequently, it seems like these pythons, at least the Australian ones, can definitely take it, and I would imagine other species can as well. The key to that, though, is always allowing them to warm back up during the day. So, oh, he was not on NPR. We should get him on there. Yeah, so those were a couple articles. There's a few more that I had tagged here, and just some stuff that kind of conveyed the anatomy of the snake. And one of the things that it got me thinking about was actually regurgitation, and why that's such a huge like thing for a snake, like why it's so like brutal on them. And if you think about it, like the food goes in, it hits a certain point where it passes into a different chamber of the intestines, and there's different acids and enzymes. Well, if something stresses that animal out, or she feels like she needs to upchuck it, all those enzymes and stuff go with it. All that energy and muscle, like growth and regeneration she just put in, is wasted. They're not getting any energy out of all that work they just put in. And then all of that acid and stomach bile that comes up with them is just going to burn like their esophageal tissue and their mucosal linings. And basically it just like really wreaks havoc in there coming up, because that stuff is supposed to stay down there. So that's why anytime you hear recommendations like don't feed them for a while after, it's because they have to heal internally, basically. It's like a huge taxing energy thing to like push the food back out after they just spent so much energy consuming it, crushing it, pulling it down, starting the digestive process, so on and so forth. So that was interesting. Carly, you mentioned you had a question earlier. Yeah, regurgitation can kill a snake. Young snakes die from regurgitation. Like, it's a pretty serious issue. Yeah, fire away, Carly. Give me a chance to catch my breath. This little girl's a 2015, by the way. So if you want to talk about digestion, this girl's tiny. You know, brings into question about mice versus rats and stuff. So, oh, no worries, you're good. Yeah, this girl was. I actually have her and a half sibling that are 2015s, and they're a fraction of the size of some of my other animals, and that's partly because they're Papuan, so they are smaller, but a lot of that has to do with maybe how well they started feeding initially, and then what they were feeding and frequency. Um, yeah, oftentimes when you catch wild snakes, they'll spit up their last meal. That's kind of an inadvertent sort of like research technique to figure out like what species have been eating in their natural habitat. It, I don't think it was ever like intended that that's how that would go, but when researchers go catch snakes, they oftentimes spit up whatever they've just eaten to try and make it easier for them to get away or gross out this potential threat, and that's a great way to see what they were eating in the area. What do I think of mice versus rats? Okay, Ryan, I'll come back to yours. Some people are advocating for cycling food for not only breeders but pets as well, and some people say no. Okay, so you're asking. Okay, so some people think it's beneficial to cycle feed animals that aren't breeding, and some people say there's no need. I would say yes, there is no need if you are not breeding them. However, there are certain limits, it seems, from species to species about what they can take during those seasons. So if you're feeding huge meals during the summer, if you're going to feed during the winter, I probably wouldn't do the same, and oftentimes animals will self-regulate. As far as potential benefits, I don't think it can hurt an animal to have a cycle, like a season where their digestive system gets a rest. Um, I think it has benefits for you as a keeper. Obviously, it saves you money and cleaning and time. But if we're thinking about like what these animals experience in the wild, it's probably natural that they have an ebb and flow of prey availability. And if they survive there, they're definitely capable of handling that. So I've got some snakes that haven't eaten in a couple months, and they're not going to breed this year. They will maybe in a year or two, but yeah, I still think it's good for them to prepare for eventual breeding. I do have my girlfriend's got a pet snake that doesn't live in the snake room, and he gets seasonal fluctuation of temperatures just based on the room. He still has access to great hotspot and digesting and everything, but I personally curb his feeding, and he's never going to breed. I think it's healthy for them. I think it gives them an intellectual like change of gears. It gives their digestive system a break because of the amount of energy expelled during digestion. During those times of year when it's colder and it takes longer for them to warm up and get their systems going, I think if you can give them a break, as long as they have the reasonable fat stores and they look okay health-wise, I think it's totally fine to, at least minimize your pet snake's feeding during the winter. Do you have to? Absolutely not. Is it healthy for them? Probably. Is it unhealthy for them to keep feeding through the winter? Probably not. I wouldn't say it's unhealthy. I would just say there are considerations as far as what they're capable of safely digesting during colder times of year. That is all. So I'm all for it. I think we overfeed in the hobby. Even, I think pets are overfed. I think we see it all too often where, oh, he looked hungry, so I fed him. And so that, I think we're all pretty guilty of. We like watching snakes feed. It is a pretty interesting process. So I think, we also don't want to subject our animals to what might be conveyed as abuse, neglect, mistreatment, things like that. So the thought of not feeding our animals for a couple months when you're not a breeder, when you don't do that regularly, is probably a little bit terrifying. So I don't think you can go wrong either way. I think as long as, you know, you're paying attention to your animal, you're good. You can see what they're doing. Yeah, so Steven, I'm cycling everything. Everything that isn't in a hatchling rack is getting a cycle. I'm still feeding those younger animals, but like half as much and smaller food items. So, for example, I have some yearlings that would be eating weaned or small rats, and right now I'm just not feeding them. If they look like they're getting skinny, I might toss them like a rat pup, but nothing more than that. And that is just because the room's cycling and I'm cycling all my racks, and I'm starting to think that it'll probably be useful when it comes time for those animals to breed. They'll already sort of have this instinctual experience of this time of year, this happens, this drops, and I already kind of know what's going on. And I think it's like part of their like behavioral maturation process, so to speak. So, hey, kitty, get out of here. All right, Ryan, what was your question again? I'm gonna scroll up, see if I can find it. Spiking your coffee. Oh yeah, the mice versus rats. And the condor community loves to feed mice with prolapse problem being common. Okay, yeah. My understanding of the prolapse problem is kind of also being looked at as more of maybe a hydration problem, like drinking, not moisture in the environment, but like actual intake of moisture. But I'm sure there is a certain line where like feeding something too large for those animals could cause prolapse. As far as mice versus rats go, let me refill my cup and I'll tell you what I do as far as it pertains to raising carpets up to adulthood, and just kind of my thoughts on it and where I get my sort of train of thought from. Man, that's a deceptively tall cup. That thing just like sucks down coffee. It just disappears. So, if you are looking at an equivalent size of weight and just size, mouse and rat, let's say you have a hopper mouse and... Oh, cool. Glad to hear. I post them up and leave them up anyway, so you're always welcome to revisit them. But let's say I've taken a hopper mouse and a pinky rat. They're about the same size, roughly. Some of the differences are that pinky rat doesn't have quite the developed skeletal system yet. No fur. Probably pretty easy to digest, but probably just a lot of mush, water, maybe a little bit of calcium from any milk from the parents, but not much else. The hopper, although it will have hair that is indigestible, it's got more of a developed skeletal system. Probably has eaten a little bit, so maybe there's some fat stores in there, a little more nutrient to pass on. In my opinion, I think a snake will get more nutrient uptake out of a mouse compared to a rat when you're talking about small size prey items. As soon as you get to a point where your animal in question could take something more substantial like a rat pup, that's when I think, hey, get out of here. That's when I think the caloric intake shifts back towards the rat favor, because at that point there is skeletal system, but also a lot more fat, and they're a little denser. What I do is, if I've got hatchlings, I find the appropriate size food that gets them going is kind of like a fuzzy mouse. It's like a week and a half old pinky, basically, and not a lot of hair. It's a good starter meal, and when you really give them something a little bit on the bigger side, I think it helps kick their digestive system into gear. And once they're eating like hoppers weekly, then I'll start looking at adult mice, and if they can take an adult mouse, I'll give them that about 3 to 5 times. If they take an adult mouse consistently 3 to 5 times, maybe they'll have a shed in that because it'll be a big bump in food size. Then I'll start switching to rat pups, because you will see a profound change in growth rate once they start taking rats. Also, once you get to adult mice, if that animal gets stuck on mice for long, which isn't uncommon, I think you'll end up feeding a lot more per sitting, and it'll take your snake a little bit longer to get up to size, or you're going to be spending more money or more time feeding multiple food items. And so I think if it's an animal that would readily eat rodents in the wild, and it, you know, hasn't been like determined to not be a rodent feeder species or something, well, we're talking carpets. So once it's eating adult mice, if it'll switch to rats, I would say do it. So I think all of the different subspecies and species of Morelia will do well on rats as sort of a majority of their prey. Throwing in some variety, if they'll take it, is always good. The exception to that would be males. I have a few. Well, I guess just one now, Mouser, and that's fine with me. He's an adult. He's 3. He's actually breeding. It's my my Darwin het albino. He's locked up with the albino right now. He's a Mouser. I'm okay with that. A large adult mouse leaves a good lump for him. He goes and digests, and it definitely is something into him. Yeah, Richard, I think that's a cool way to add supplements if you're poking holes in your rodent. We used to do this with get meds to like the alligators and stuff like that at the zoo. So we would give probiotics to some of our animals, or if we had an animal that needed like an oral med, we just basically take the mouse. I'd take my knife and go right into the skin cavity of the mouse, not through the organs, but like down. It creates a little pocket, and you can shove little vitamins or supplements and things like that. I think it would take a lot to over supplement. Just keep that in mind. Don't over supplement. Like too much calcium is a thing. But yeah, like once every few months, I think that's fine. I think if you have a mouse and you just took like a little pocket knife or a razor and you just cut the like dermal skin layer, you'll feel that it's tough. Once you cut it open, you'll see that the organs and stuff in there are sort of encased in their own little mucus lining, this weird little tissue. Then you can shove a vitamin. If you can get it in the mouth, that's fine. Yeah, that works too. Oftentimes though, like if the capsule is too big, then you're SOL. But yeah, that's a great way to sort of add vitamins to an animal's regimen without them ever knowing. You don't have to do anything stressful like restrain them or inject them or anything like that. So I think that's awesome to do. Yeah, so mice versus rats. I think depending on the animal, a feeder version of a turducken, yeah. Feed set. Ooh, you know what you could do, and this would probably work well for retics, is you could put like a mouse inside a rat, inside a bigger rat, inside a rabbit. Yeah, Tom, I'll be at Pomona. So that's coming up in like 2 weeks. Like that's right around the corner. So if anybody's making it out to the Pomona Reptile Super Show, it's the weekend of January 5th and 6th. And I will be hanging out with my good buddy Brian Cusco, helping him at his booth, just making sure he has all his gear in order and all that good stuff. I think there's a turkey walking around on my street outside. I just heard a turkey. We have turkeys out here. The first week I moved in here, I chased a turkey down the road because he wouldn't get out of the street and almost got hit. And then he was staring at my car in the middle of the road. That was fun. Yeah, Melanie. So I worked with. I don't have turkeys. The city has them. I worked the last Pomona in August. I was there, and I hung out with Brian at his booth. Nothing was stolen. Yeah, no. But he also didn't have anything like unattended. There's always somebody at the booth, and it was full setup and lights. Like nobody would be able to do it. So, I plan on shaving my head real short right before, fluffing this out right before, getting some really small shirts, and going to the gym as much as possible before, and standing like this, real big. No, I'm not big. That won't work. I smile too much to be intimidating anyway, so it'll be a fun time. Pomona's good. Um, there's bad eggs everywhere. Yeah, he does have tracking devices on his stuff now. Yes. So if anybody knows, anytime I'm in a video with Brian, there's a lot of thumbs downs. See you later, Carly. Yeah, man. So this is one of my Papuan carpets. This is a 2015 female with some import blood, some GQ Hannibal stuff, and I'll have to double check, but a lot of import blood in this animal, and she's got some of the blackest blacks, and even like her pattern is like dark, and her head is super dark. And so then I have this male that's a half sibling to her, whose head is like almost entirely black, has a black nose. I love it. Yeah, I have messed with locality jungles. I had a pair of Palmerstons for a while before I sold them. Don't ask me why I sold them. But that's it as far as what I've done. I think it would be cool to work with some of them. Have I ever fed baby chicks to any of my snakes? Yes, I have. I find carpet pythons readily take variety of food like that without getting stuck on it. For the most part, it can happen. I have heard of Darwins and Papuans getting stuck on like mice or chicks, but I think it's okay. It's just feathers and beaks are hard to digest, so it shouldn't be like a staple. Yeah, actually, I should get some jungles this year. My girl's up there as thick as a cinnamon roll. Every time I threw the mail in, they locked up. So, let's see. Yeah, I palpated her, what's today? 23rd. I palpated her 10 days ago, and she had some follicles in her. She and the male have been breeding, and then she kicks the male out. So I shouldn't. She's a proven breeder, and if we are going along her timeline from 2 years ago, we should be on track. So I should be getting some jungles from her. The post that I put up last night talking about today with that striped animal, that's the male who's been breeding her. He is a Vandeventer line animal, which is where he gets that stripe and sort of that mellow golden color, but he's also 50% ivory, which is a Nick Mutton sort of line bred white and black high contrast group of animals. Although I think there are a couple lines of ivory, and obviously the ivory doesn't come through because the Vandeventer stuff is really powerful. But I'm hoping the combination should be nice with her color. Well, she's only given me one clutch, and she gave me 16 good and one slug that year, I think. So, and she's bigger now, so they usually do better their second. Like continual clutches later on will be better for females. So we'll see. So we're already at over half an hour, so what I'll do is I'll just run down the pairs and probably let y'all go unless anybody has questions. But the female visual albino Darwin to my het male have been inseparable for the last 3 days, which is awesome to see. I caught a lock the other day. I snuck in on them and just like stuck my camera in and just like blindly took a few photos and looked at what I captured and saw that. Oh yeah, man. See, I appreciate people bringing me suggestions. It gives me something to talk about and like kind of, formulate this segment on. So Darwins are looking good. Jungle should be in the bag. Knock on wood. Never want to assume with animals. My caramel girl, every time I put the tiger male in now, they kind of spend the night on the heat, but like otherwise, I think they're done. She's like side rolling, bloated, like huge, like doing all sorts of behavior she never does. So that's looking good. I don't have any of the striped Darwins. I need to hit up Todd for some of his reduced pattern ones. My zebras are inseparable. They just, I don't ever really catch a lock, but they're always like, ooh, we never leave each other's side. We love each other. No, they're annoying. That was stupid. Don't listen to me. They just really, they're compatible, it seems. So I would be surprised if they haven't been locking up or doing anything, given how close together they are all the time. And then my Xanthic Coastal Girl and the Xanthic Zebra have been kind of the same all over each other, but she's got like unmistakable like body framing. I call it A framing, where like if you looked at her body, it's like that. The belly isn't fully on, and she's just peaked. All the like all the resources have shifted down. It like almost looks like she's got a tube in her because she's probably building follicles, and so that looks like it's a go. Uh, my import Popwins. Oh, Merry Christmas, Melanie. The import Popwins are together again. The male just shed. They were cuddling, but they might be done. Timing would suggest that she's probably close. I saw her building all follicles and swelling, and definitely like palpated marble-sized follicles in her. It was unmistakable. It was huge. So that should be a go. And then the children's pythons are definitely going. That female looks like she ate another children's python. And then the super zebra head exanthic. I can't get a read on her. She belongs to my friend Terrell, and she's just like a what did I say? She's like a race car. She's just insane. She's 100 miles an hour the whole time, and she's tense, and she's like thick and like muscular. So she never looks fat. I don't ever see like any good body posture that like makes me feel confident. I see tons of cuddling. I'm pretty sure I caught them locked up. Looks like twice, but otherwise I don't know. So I'm not really sure what to think. So that pairing looking possible, but who knows. And then Amazon tree boas. I have no idea what I'm doing as far as breeding those goes. But they were cuddling yesterday in the hide together. I don't know. We'll figure that one out as we go along. But otherwise, it's looking like it should be raining carpet pythons this year. And if anybody wants children's pythons, if I can get them eating and get them going, you'll see some of those from me too. Anywho, could be a great year. Could be a really big year. Could be a lot of babies, a lot of mouths to feed. Yeah, I gotta hit the gym too, Frank. Gotta get it in. Get it while the getting's good. I tend to never pair when my animals are in blue. I don't really get any activity out of them, especially males. When males are in shed, they're lazy. They don't care. You'll occasionally find one that doesn't care. Females, I feel like when they're in shed, they're like disinterested with the male, and they'll maybe shrug them off or just not show any interest, so that doesn't work. But yeah, I just wait till they shed. If you're like at the end of the season, you're trying to get it in before like the last rain or something, you can throw them in. It's not going to hurt anything, but I just don't find any activity out of my animals breeding when they're in shed. So, good question. All right, we're encroaching on this being a long show. They've gotten longer every single episode. Thanks, Steven. All right. Keep those questions for next week. Feel free to message me with any of them if you want. Don't forget to stay tuned. Yeah, I can try and post those for you, Ron. Southeast Carpet Fest is coming up soon. Talk to Ian Bissell. I think they're getting ready to start getting the auction and stuff together. That's coming up in February out in Florida at the Terrestrial and Arboreal facility with Cody and Pia Bartolini. So you should be able to find stuff on Facebook for that. Definitely a good cause, and they're doing some cool stuff as far as the what the donations are going to this year. So they're going to do USARK, and then there's going to be a little cherry on top. So definitely support that cause. And then as far as Southwest Carpet Fest, we're still working on getting our details going, but that should be potentially at Brian Cusco's place in Atascadero. So yeah, stay tuned for that stuff. A lot's going to be coming through the pipeline, but yeah. Anywho, I hope everyone has a great Christmas, holiday, whatever you celebrate. Hope your animals are well. Hope you're well. Let me know if you have questions for next week. I also still have t-shirts, and prints are always available. The metal mounted black glass prints. I forgot I have those. I gotta update those. Anywho, love, peace, and chicken grease. I hope they're gaining traction. It's fun. I like talking carpets.